Happy weekend. I'm Sheryl Plouffe in for Chris St. Clair on this Sunday, June 7th. I hope that you've had a great weekend so far and that the weather will cooperate with whatever plans you have for the day ahead. These are the current systems. We do have the potential for some active weather in Manitoba and also in Toronto later tonight. In fact, Friday, and we will be looking actually at some rainfall totals that may be pretty impressive. Something that we want to make mention of is that with the potential for storms coming in overnight, especially between the 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. hours overnight tonight into Monday morning, there could be a lot of rain coming through, possibly in storms. So maybe not the best night for a good night's sleep, that's for sure. Additional rainfall now across Atlantic Canada. There's not that much more to go here. We're really on the tail end of the system. And actually, you can see it here as it departs. High pressure takes hold. Beautiful day today in the Maritimes for the most part. Tuesday, though, more unsettled as our system moves up to the north and it's replaced by yet another low that comes in for the mid part of next week and drapes itself across Ontario, Quebec, and then moves into the Atlantic provinces. This is the thunderstorm risk, though. Well, there's no risk for thunderstorms in Alberta so much. Beautiful weather there today, but this is where we have the potential for some active weather in the form of thunderstorms throughout the day. We're talking in Manitoba specifically. We did have some special weather statements for BC. It's still hot, yes, but we actually have, Lytton yesterday, hot spot in the nation, 34 degrees. We've got Nate in Iqaluit, Nunavut coming up. You're watching the Weather Network, Canada's #1 source for accurate weather forecasts and all things Western Canada. Well, you know what? At sea level, it's definitely pretty warm. In fact, yesterday, even in Lytton, BC, it was very hot. 34 was the hot spot in the nation. This afternoon, that was yesterday, but today we're talking about values here in the low 30s in some cases, so the heat continues. And even Alberta is really faring well on the front of temperatures. We're in the mid-20s generally, and we've got precipitation, but it's more so in Manitoba and northern Ontario as we look ahead. This is the rainfall forecast through Wednesday. Let's take a look at Ontario and back in northern western Ontario and back into southern Manitoba. There's a risk for some thunderstorms today. Some of these may be pretty powerful, though, in Winnipeg at 25 degrees, watching for some storm development later in the day. Nate Coleman, he is typically in Atlantic Canada, but right now, this afternoon, we've got values in northern Ontario that be in the mid-teens. The rain will continue, perfect fishing weather in the northeast, and great fishing lakes, of course. And then cross southern Ontario, 21 for Toronto. Toronto really have to watch for the potential for some big storms later overnight. We're talking 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. There are some look at that. See how the computer model is picking up what could essentially be a squall line of storms coming through. Strong winds, but especially concerned about the amount of rain that could come very quickly from this line that develops. So we definitely have to watch that situation. And then we look at our forecast conditions for Montreal Grand Prix, 21 degrees. I'm Sheryl Plouffe. Glad you're here for an update. I want to talk about the long-range forecast and what's in store for the next week. Now, Sunday, getting a day to recharge, and maybe you are planning your business trip for the week ahead. I'll show you some 7-day forecasts coming up for select cities across the country. These are our systems today and also tomorrow. We're dealing with the cold front coming through. That could potentially be pretty intense for southern Ontario and possibly even some big rains in Ottawa and Montreal overnight leading into early Monday. Then the low pressure system moves away. We also have potential today of storms in Manitoba, and then a new low pressure system is developing here. So we've got our 7-day forecast to start things off in St. John's. Look at the single-digit highs expected for the next couple of days, and then a little bit of a rebound in our temperatures. I love drone video. I don't know about you. And when we look at our forecast for southern Ontario, we're going to have some pretty decent rain, I think, coming through with what could potentially be a line of thunderstorms overnight. This is the 7-day forecast for Halifax. If your travel plans take you there, you've got values here next week into the 20s. And for Montreal, of course, today's big Grand Prix day, but tomorrow, the rain. Thankfully, the rain is holding off today, actually, for the big race. But that rain could continue through Tuesday, and then we see a nice rebound. But look at this, a drop in our temperatures by next Saturday with some isolated showers coming through. Now we're looking at Toronto. Again, risk for storms. The worst part of that could be overnight tonight from, say, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. in that range. It might wake you up, actually. And then we have a little bit of a drop in our temperatures. But overall, you know, here, a humidex of 33 by the time we get to next Saturday. Across Western Canada, it's all high pressure. Very hot temperatures in the BC South interior. It is Sunday, June 7th. I'm in for Chris St. Clair, and we are talking about, actually, when we look at our current systems, primarily two areas that we need to watch for. I think initially it's Manitoba, still the heat continues in the west, and then later in the day there are some big storms right now over Iowa and moving into Wisconsin. That could be a problem for southern Ontario through the overnight, and some rain on the way for Montreal overnight as well. But we're dealing with now, but we do have still the potential of some more rainfall with our departing system, and more so in the way of incoming rain. And you can see that we're talking in some areas here north of Montreal to be seeing about 20 plus millimeters of rain. That's from our next low pressure system that has the potential to bring with it some thunderstorms. So if we get, say, even 20 to 30 millimeters of rain in a very short amount of time, that's possibly going to lead to some ponding, and you might be driving to work on Monday through some pretty big puddles. So looking ahead now to Monday, there's the center of our low pressure system up toward the north. Draping down is the cold front, and there's potential to see even a quasi squall line associated with that. So definitely watching for some storms. Let's talk about storm potential and Western Canada's forecast. Here's Deb with an update from Calgary. Thanks so much, Deb. So no risk in Alberta. Beautiful conditions here, even Saskatchewan faring pretty well, except once you get to the Manitoba border. And really Manitoba, northwestern Ontario, the best risk for some storms as we look ahead to today. The heat continues despite the special weather statements having ended in southern BC. We saw some really hot temperatures. Today is no exception. Values in the low 30s. We could even be topping up into the 36-degree range in some cases. But we watch our low pressure system moving over northern Ontario. There is a low bringing some beneficial rains to the northern portions here where the wildfire danger rating is high. But back toward the south of BC, we're talking about some really nice temperatures and fair conditions, at least for the next few days. And that's his footage in northern Ontario. And speaking of Ontario, we've got a pretty decent round of storms on the way from our low pressure system that's moving through. I'm Sheryl Plouffe in for Chris St. Clair on this Sunday. Hopefully you're having a great weekend so far. We're concerned about this though, because look what happens. See how organized that line of storms is as it moves its way across. We could possibly be dealing with some very powerful storms capable of producing torrential and downpours of rain that could possibly in urban centers result in some urban flooding. So a little bit of concern over that overnight into the early morning hours. This is the frost advisory that's still in place, some cold overnight temperatures in eastern Canada. We're on the tail end of our rain right now for the Avalon, and then we have our rain incoming. Overnight tonight, that's going to be moving into Montreal and Quebec City, and especially north up toward Mont Tremblant. We could be dealing with some decent amounts of rain too. So back to our systems. We've got our departing low moves up to the north, and will bring rain on Tuesday to the Maritimes. But then we've got our low pressure system here that's moving in once again, another powerful possible front coming our way. A really new thing called Google Oceans has popped up, and with more on that, here's Dan. Thanks so much for that, Dan. You know, I'm going to have a lot of fun with that with my son. It can be educational as well, can't it? Risk for storms today in Manitoba. We'll be watching that. And of course, we have more coming up in Force of Nature Extended. Stay with us. Time now for your weekend weather. I'm Sheryl Plouffe, and let's get you caught up now looking ahead to Monday and Tuesday. We've got our low pressure system with a pretty powerful cold front that's moving through, and a secondary low that brings some beneficial rains to areas in northern Alberta and Saskatchewan that can use it, considering the wildfire risk. And then that system moves into the Atlantic provinces, and with that it will bring some rainfall. Low pressure system over northwestern Ontario also brings some precipitation. So that's the look ahead to Tuesday. Here is some must-see video from absolutely spectacular. Let's take a look at some long-range forecast now, some 7 days. So today, day of rest, Sunday for some, not for all. But if you are traveling on business, this is what you can expect if you're heading to Halifax this week. You've got temperatures here at some point, starting on Wednesday at least, reaching into the low 20s. So that's a little bit more seasonal. Montreal, thankfully the rain holding off for the Grand Prix today. But overnight tonight, Monday, Tuesday, some rainfall. And then we can see here, look at this. The humidex readings increase once again into the low 30s. The same will be true for Toronto, where we've got 30, 33 feels like on Saturday. So definitely looking at some warm weather coming into southern Ontario because of a return flow around the high pressure that we've had in place. This is the way to connect with us on Instagram, as are so many of the other on-air personalities here at the Weather Network. Calgary, 30 degrees for Monday, looking great. Temperatures really take a dive by the time we get to Saturday.